Ethan Voss stood still as the docking bay doors of Varela Station opened before him. A light hiss echoed through the air as the seal broke, and the scent of metal and ozone filled his lungs. He had read about the great neutral station that floated between human and alien space, but seeing it with his own eyes was something else. Varela was huge like a small moon with long, glowing corridors and walls that shimmered slightly from advanced alien tech. This was the first time in history that humans had been invited to attend peace talks with the Tlani Empire's strong, proud race of tall, armored warriors. Many in the galaxy still didn't take humans seriously. Humanity was young compared to the older starfaring species. But they were clever and fast learners. Ethan was one of Earth's youngest diplomats, and this mission was the most important of his life. He had trained for months, learning Tlani customs, language, and history. But nothing had prepared him for what came next. The welcome hall was filled with delegates from both sides. Tlani stood out immediately. They were tall lazuli over 7 feet with lean, powerful bodies and smooth, dark blue armor that looked grown, not made. Their faces were sharp and elegant, with glowing green eyes that seemed to see everything. They moved like tigers, silent, proud and aware of every motion around them. Ethan kept his face calm, but inside his nerves danced. His job was to represent Earth with honor and not embarrass his species. His assistant Maya walked beside him, whispering notes through the tiny earpiece in his right ear. Suddenly, the room grew quiet. The Tlani turned to face the main entrance. She entered. Commander Garai. Ethan had seen images of her in briefings. She was one of the highest-ranking officers in the Tlani, military and known across the galaxy for her brilliance in battle and diplomacy. But no photo had captured what he was seeing now. She was graceful, strong. Her armor shimmered like black glass under starlight. Her long, silver-black hair was tied in a warrior's braid, and her gaze swept over the humans like she was reading their thoughts. When she walked, people moved. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Without meaning to, he leaned slightly toward Maya and whispered, "She's perfect." It was barely a breath. He thought no one heard. Maya didn't respond, only gave him a sharp glance. Ethan straightened and tried to look official again. What he didn't know. What no one had warned him about was that Tlani hearing was far more sensitive than humans realized. They were a species of warriors trained to pick up that night. In his quarters, Ethan paced the room. He remembered the way she had looked at him after the whisper. Could she have heard it? No, impossible. He had barely spoken. Maybe he was imagining things. Still, he couldn't forget the way she moved, or how she stood among her people like a queen made of iron and fire. She's perfect. He repeated to himself, a little amazed at how true it still felt. Meanwhile, far across the station, Shirai stood in her own chamber, surrounded by soft lights and glowing crystals. Her second-in-command spoke beside her, giving reports about security and human behavior. She listened quietly, but her thoughts were elsewhere. "Ethan Voss," she said finally. "Yes, Commander." "What do we know about him?" "He is young, new to diplomacy, intelligent, quiet." Shirai was silent for a moment, her glowing eyes narrowed in thought. "He called me perfect." The aide blinked in surprise. "Commander," "I heard him when I entered the hall. He said it to the female beside him." "Was it an insult?" "Wait." "No," she said. His voice was steady. "Honest. He admired me." She looked toward the stars outside her window. "Strange," she said softly. "Humans speak so easily, but mean it so rarely." She crossed her arms and stood tall. "This one may be different." Commander Garai walked down the glowing corridors of Varela Station. Her steps were silent, her mind deep in thought. The human diplomat, Ethan Voss, had surprised her. Not with his words alone, but with the way he said them, quiet, respectful, and honest. That was rare, even among her own people. She had studied humans. They were loud, emotional, and often careless with words. But Ethan had not spoken like a fool. He had spoken as someone who saw something and truly meant it. That made her curious. In the days that followed, the peace talks continued. The humans in Tlani sat in the great council chamber each morning, speaking through translators and soft-voiced aides. There were disagreements, delays, and moments of tension. But there was also progress. Ethan sat quietly during most meetings. Watching and listening, he did not interrupt. He spoke only when needed. And when he did, his words were simple but sharp, like a well-cut blade. Sci-Fi noticed at first she simply watched him. Then she began asking questions during the meeting's questions. That made Ethan speak. He answered with calm words, showing that he understood not only his own people, but also the Tlani customs. One morning, during a short break, Jeri walked over to the humans' table. This was not common. Most Tlani leaders stayed distant from humans outside formal meetings, but she moved with purpose. Ethan looked up and stood straight. He tried to stay calm, but inside, his heart jumped. Ambassador Vos Jeri said in her deep, clear voice. "Commander Jeri," he replied with a respectful nod. "I have reviewed your speech from yesterday," she said. "Your logic was sound. I did not expect such careful thought from one so new." Ethan smiled politely. "Thank you. I've had good teachers." Jeri tilted her head. "And yet, you spoke only a few words in the chamber." "I believe in listening." Before speaking, he replied, "especially when in the presence of greatness." That word greatness got her attention. Reminded her of the word he had whispered before. "Perfect. Humans speak of greatness often," she said. "But your kind sees it differently." "Maybe." Ethan said, "To us, greatness isn't just about strength. It's about balance. Strength with kindness, power with restraint." Jeri paused for a moment. Then she nodded once and walked away. Ethan sat down slowly, unsure if the conversation had gone well or not. Back in the Tlani quarters, Jeri stood with her advisors. One of them, a tall male named Kareth, looked concerned. "You approach the human often," he said. "Some might see it as weakness." Jeri looked at him coldly. "Curiosity is not weakness. It is the beginning of understanding. He is not one of us." "No," she agreed. "And that is why I must learn." That evening, a small ceremony was held in the main hall of the station. It was a show of unity between both species. Food from Earth and Tlani was served. Music from both cultures played gently in the background. People mingled, though still cautiously. Ethan stood by a window, looking out at the stars. Maya, his assistant, handed him a glass of water. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking about her." Ethan gave a small smile. "She's fascinating." "Careful," Maya said.
Oh.
"They don't take flirting lightly." "I'm not flirting," he said quickly. "I'm just ... respectful." Jeri stepped beside him. Maya quickly excused herself. "I see you like the stars." Jeri said, "They remind me that we're small," Ethan replied. "But also ... connected." Jeri followed his gaze. "Our people once thought we were alone. Then we found the stars were full of voices. Some loud," Ethan said. "Some quiet." She looked at him again, her eyes steady. "The quiet kind." He turned to her. "Does that bother you?" "Oh," she said. "It ... interests me." There was a pause, long, but not awkward. Then she said something that surprised him. "Among my people, when someone shows true respect, we offer a test. It's a chance to prove their honor. Would you accept such a challenge?" Ethan blinked. "What kind of challenge begins?" The next morning, Ethan woke early. He stood in front of the mirror in his quarters, tying the collar of his diplomatic suit. His hands were steady, but inside, he felt the pressure building. Commander Jeri had given him a challenge. He didn't know what it was yet, but he knew. The Tlani took such things very seriously. When he arrived at the training dome on Varela Station, the atmosphere was different. The room was wide and tall, with floating platforms and soft blue lights glowing above. Several Tlani officers were present, including Jeri. All of them wore light armor and stood with perfect posture. Ethan stepped forward, trying not to show his nerves. Sci-Fi spoke clearly. Today, we test your strength not just of body, but of mind. Humans are not built like us, but we respect cleverness and courage. Ethan nodded. I'm ready. Sci-Fi lifted her hand. A hologram flickered. To life above the floor? It showed a large room full of floating pieces, shifting walls, and glowing targets. This is a zero-gravity puzzle trial, she said. You must cross the field, reach the control node, and disable the red beacon. You have one chance. You fall or take too long, the test ends. Ethan studied the hologram. It looked difficult, floating blocks, spinning obstacles, and strange energy traps. But he saw something else. Patterns. Sci-Fi looked at him. You may refuse. This is not a test meant for humans. He shook his head. I accept. A few Talani officers whispered among themselves, surprised by his bravery. Garai, however, remained silent and motioned him to enter. Ethan floated into the test chamber. As soon as the door closed, gravity disappeared. He drifted for a second, then pushed himself forward with careful moves. He remembered his space. Training on Earth's slow is fast in zero gravity. Control is everything. At first, the trial seemed simple. He jumped from one platform to another, using handholds and metal bars. But soon, the platforms began to spin. Small energy fields flickered in and out. One wrong move could throw him off into the air, with no way to stop. Talani officers watched from above, some shaking their heads. He will fail, one whispered. This is not his place. Garai said nothing. Her eyes stayed on Ethan. Ethan didn't move fast, but he moved smart. He didn't rush. He studied each obstacle. He used momentum carefully, floating when needed, gripping tightly when the path changed. Halfway through, he reached a spinning wall. There were no handholds, just a small beam at the center. He waited, watched, then pushed himself at just the right moment. He passed through cleanly. Jaria's eyes narrowed slightly. Her interest grew. Finally, after what felt like an hour, Ethan reached the final control node. It glowed red. He tapped the screen, solved a short logic puzzle, and shut it down. The beacon turned green. The trial ended. Ethan floated slowly down as the gravity returned. His heart pounded. His face was red with effort, but he stood tall. Silence then. One of the Talani said, he passed. Another added, impressive. For a human, Garai stepped forward. Her face remained calm, but something in her eyes had changed. You did well, she said. Ethan caught his breath.
You, Commander, you saw more than the surface, she said. You understood the pattern that is rare, he smiled. That wasn't strength I used.
Just observation. Garai nodded. You used your gift? That is strength too. Ethan looked around. So, does that mean I passed the test? Garai stepped closer. She was taller than him by a head, but she didn't look down on him. Not anymore? You did more than pass, she said. You earned respect. Ethan's heart beat faster. Then what comes next? Garai tilted her head slightly. Now, we speak as equals. Later that day, the news of Ethan's success spread through the station. Some were shocked, others curious. A few Talani even asked to study human training methods. But for Garai, something deeper had started. She had tested a human and found something unexpected. She had expected failure. She had expected excuses. Ssed and Garai. She now greeted him with a slight tilt of the head, an ancient Talani sign of respect. One afternoon, after a long council session, Garai stood beside him in the station's garden dome. The dome was peaceful, full of soft lights, tall alien trees, and small floating flowers that glowed like stars. You are quiet again, she said. Ethan smiled, just enjoying the silence. You enjoy silence often. Helps me think, he said. Then he looked at her. And sometimes, silence says more than words. Garai studied him for a moment. Her glowing green eyes were unreadable. Among my people, we speak with actions. Words are used. Carefully, I've noticed, Ethan replied. That's why I try not to waste mine. Jirai looked around. This place reminds me of home. The gardens on my training world were larger, but the feeling is the same. Ethan paused. You trained as a warrior since childhood. Yes, she said. We begin at age 5. Discipline, strength, tradition. We do not ask what do you want to become. We ask how will you serve your people. Ethan nodded slowly. That's very different from Earth. We ask children what they want to be when they grow up. Sometimes they change their answer every week. Jirai raised an eyebrow. Ah. Is that weakness? Ethan shook his head. Not always. Sometimes. It's how we discover who we really are. She was silent. Then she said, You humans are full of surprises, he chuckled. We get that a lot. For a long moment they just stood there listening to the soft hum of the dome and the gentle glow of the flowers. Then Jirai said something unexpected. When you said those words, she's perfect, you were not speaking to me. Ethan froze. His heart skipped. You heard that? Said calmly. Tlani hearing is very sharp, especially mine. He looked embarrassed. I didn't mean to offend you. You did not, she said. I only wondered what you meant. Ethan took a deep breath. It wasn't about looks, not just. That I saw someone strong, confident, leading others with purpose. That's not something you see every day. I was impressed. Jiraiya looked at him. For once her expression softened. Just a little, in our culture, she said. We are not praised easily. We are expected to be strong always. But your words were honest, and honesty has weight. Ethan met her eyes. I meant it, every word. She said nothing, but there was something in her gaze, an unspoken signal that made his chest feel warm. Not romantic, not yet, but something deep, something real. Over the next few days, they saw each other often, sometimes in meetings, sometimes during meals. Once, she joined him for tea, a human drink. She found odd, but interesting. They talked about many things. War, peace, duty, family. They learned that their worlds were very different, but their thoughts sometimes were not. Maya, Ethan's assistant, noticed it too. You two are becoming close, she said one night. Ethan shrugged. I don't know what it is. It's not. It's like anything I've felt before. She respects you, Maya said. That's rare. Not just for her, but for Tlani in general. You've earned something important, he nodded. I just hope I don't mess it up. Garai, on the other hand, spoke with her second-in-command. Kareth, she said, this human is different. Kareth frowned. You trust him? I do. Enough to stand beside him in front of the council? The peace talks between humans and the Tlani were going better than anyone had expected. Each day, Ethan and Jiraiya worked together in the council chambers. They didn't always agree, but they listened, they discussed, and they found middle ground. The galaxy had seen many failed talks before, but this one felt different, until everything nearly fell apart. It began with a small power. Flicker on Deck 9 of Varela Station. Just a few seconds of lights going out, nothing serious, or so it seemed. But then came the alarm. Warning. Life support failure detected, Deck 9. Immediate evacuation required. The voice echoed across the station. Ethan was in the corridor. Near the Tlani sector, when it happened, people started running. Lights flashed red. Thick emergency doors began closing. He turned and saw Tlani engineers trying to stop the lockdown. What's happening? He asked one of them. Sabotage? The officer replied, Someone disabled the oxygen flow in the lower halls. If not stopped, it will spread. Just then, Commander Jirai. She had already removed her armor's safety locks and was preparing to enter the affected zone. You can't go in there alone, Ethan said quickly. Jirai looked at him. My people are still inside. I will not leave them. Then I'm coming with you. Jirai paused. You have no armor, no protection. I don't need armor to help. I know the station's systems. I've studied the maps. She hesitated for only a second. Then she nodded once. Together, they stepped through the emergency door just before it sealed behind them. Inside. Deck 9, the air was thin. Red lights flashed. Along the walls, smoke leaked from vents. A strange hum came from deeper inside the corridor. They moved quickly. Jirai led the way, strong and focused. Ethan followed, reading system data on his wrist tablet. "We need to reach the control panel in the maintenance core," he said. They passed 2 Talani soldiers who had collapsed from the thin air. Jirai lifted one onto her shoulder without effort. Ethan dragged the other by the arms. "Keep breathing slow," Ethan warned. "Don't waste air." Jirai nodded. She was tough, but even she could feel the lack of oxygen. Finally, they reached the control room. Inside, a small fire burned near the wires. Sparks flew. Ethan rushed forward, opening the control panel. "I need a minute." Jiraiya put down the injured soldier and turned, weapon ready. "I'll cover you." Ethan's fingers moved fast. He bypassed the burned circuits and rerouted the power. A green light blinked on the panel. "Life support restarting," the system announced. Fresh air began to flow through the vents. Jirai let out a slow breath. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Ethan replied. Outside the room, footsteps echoed. Talani guards arrived, their faces tight with concern. "Commander, are you injured?" Shirai shook her head. "No, but 2 of ours need medical help." The guards took the injured soldiers and left. Jirai turned to Ethan. "You risked your life." He looked at her, serious. "Because lives were at stake, and because you were going in alone." "I've faced danger before," she said. "I know, but you don't have to face it alone." Shirai was silent for a moment. Her eyes searched his face. Then she asked softly, "When you said I was perfect, did you mean it?" Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't expected her to ask again. Not here, not now. "Yes," he said. "I meant it, not just that day. Every day since." Jirai looked at him for a long time. Then, without a word, she stepped closer. She raised her hand and pressed it gently against his chest, a tawny gesture of deep trust in her culture. It was only done to those who had proven loyalty beyond words. "You have my respect," she said, "and something more." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "Thank you," he said. "That means more than you know." Later, when the station returned to normal, the news of their teamwork spread fast. Humans and Talani began to speak of each other with new words: brave, clever, honorable. And for Jirai and Ethan, something had changed. They were no longer just representatives of their people. They were allies. They were friends, and maybe the start of something even more. The peace talks continued for several more days. Something had changed for the better. After the life support crisis on Deck 9, the tension between the humans and the Talani had started to fade. Now, when the 2 groups entered the council chamber, they didn't just sit across from each other like strangers. They exchanged nods. A few even shared quiet conversations before meetings began. Everyone knew why. It was because of Ethan Voss and Commander Jirai. Their brave teamwork during the emergency had become a story repeated across the station. People whispered about how a human and a Talani had walked into danger together and walked out alive side by side. Some called it luck, others called it honor. But for many it was something greater: trust. Ethan, still wearing his plain diplomatic suit, now carried more weight than any armor could give. When he spoke, people listened. Even the most serious Talani officers gave him space to speak freely. He had earned his voice. And Shirai, her silence spoke volumes. She didn't need to explain herself. Her actions had already done that. They continued to lead with strength and calm. But now she also watched Ethan not with suspicion, but with understanding. One day, in the middle of an important session, an old argument came up again. A Talani elder said, "Humans are too soft. We speak with emotion. We fight with logic. How can we trust such a species to stand beside us in battle?" The room went quiet. All eyes turned to Jirai. She stood slowly and looked around. "I once believed the same," she said, "but I have seen with my own eyes how a human faces danger. Not with muscle, but with mind. Not with fear, but with courage." She paused, then added, Ethan Voss saved our people without a weapon. He acted without being asked. If that is softness, then perhaps softness has value. The room remained silent then. For the first time in Talani history, an elder bowed, his head to a human. The final peace agreement was signed 2 days later. Both sides stood together no longer as enemies, but as partners. The signing took place in the grand chamber of Varela Station. Lights shone bright, and representatives from many other species watched the event with interest. Ethan stood beside Garai as the two signed the pact. A message from Earth's leader played on the screen. Today marks a new beginning between two great peoples. Let this be the first step toward unity, not just between our species, but across the stars. As the room clapped softly in respect, Shariah leaned toward Ethan and said, You handled that well. He smiled. I had a good teacher. Later, after the ceremony, Ethan and Garai walked alone through one of the quieter corridors of the station. It feels strange, Ethan said, knowing it's finally done. Garai nodded. Yes. Peace is not easy, but worth the effort. They reached a wide observation window. Beyond it, stars stretched across the black sky like glitter scattered in the dark. Earth could not be seen, but Ethan knew it was out there, his home. Shirai looked out too. I used to think humans were only good at making noise, Ethan chuckled. We are pretty loud, but now I understand. You're more than sound. You are meaning. You are heart. He turned to her. And you are more than strength. Our wisdom. She didn't reply, but her expression changed, gentle, thoughtful. Then she raised her hand and opened her palm toward him. Ethan knew this gesture now. In Talani culture, it meant a connection offered, a deep and rare sign of trust, sometimes given between allies, and sometimes more. Ethan slowly placed his hand over hers. No words were needed. At that moment, something passed between them. It's not love in the usual sense, not yet, but something powerful built on shared danger, shared effort, and shared hope. I never expected this, Ethan said quietly. When I came here, I just wanted peace. I didn't know I'd find you. Jerry's lips moved into the smallest of smiles. Sometimes peace brings more than silence. Sometimes it brings truth. A message came through the intercom. Commander. Garai. Ambassador Voss. You are requested in the main hall. Garai looked at Ethan. Shall we? He nodded. Let's face the stars together. And together, they walked down the corridor, not as soldier and diplomat. Not as alien and human, but as to who had built something far stronger than anyone had expected. An alliance not made by force or fear, but by respect. 3 weeks. After the peace agreement, Commander Garai stood at the edge of Earth's sky for the first time. Her transport ship hovered high above the blue planet, and she looked down with silent wonder. It's more green than I expected, she said. Softly beside her, Ethan Voss smiled. Wait until you see it from the ground. The Talani had sent Garai to Earth as part of a cultural exchange. In return, Earth had sent 3 scientists to the Talani homeworld. It was the first time their species had ever opened their worlds to each other. Ethan had offered to personally guide Garai across Earth's major cities, landmarks, and peaceful gardens. The request had surprised both governments, but they had agreed. After all, the two had become symbols of unity. As they landed, Garai stepped onto Earth's soil. She wore a more flexible version of her armor, adapted for Earth's gravity. Her human guards watched quietly, not with fear, but with curiosity and respect. Ethan led her to the United Earth Assembly Building, where leaders welcomed her warmly. She responded with calm dignity. She gave a short speech, her words slow, but clear. I did not come as a conqueror, she said. I came as a listener, as one who saw value beyond the battlefield. Today, I stand beside a human not because of duty, but because of what we built together. The hall clapped softly, the moment full of meaning. Later, Ethan and Garai walked through a quiet park near the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in orange and purple. Children played in the distance. The wind carried the scent of flowers and fresh grass. This world is alive, Shirai said. Ethan looked around. It's not perfect. We still have problems, but we try. You love your home deeply, she said. I do, he replied. And I want you to feel welcome here. Garai bent down and touched a flower, something soft and delicate. So different from the cold metal of space. Your people are more open than I expected. Ethan gave a small laugh. Some are. Some still fear the unknown. But things are changing. They sat down on a stone bench beside a small pond. Ducks floated on the water. City lights blinked in the distance. Garai looked at Ethan. Tell me something honest. No politics. No formal words. He looked at her, surprised. Then he nodded. I thought I came to Varela to do a job. It's just another mission. But I left with something more than success. I left with understanding and with someone I deeply respect. She tilted her head slightly. Only respect? He smiled. Maybe more than that. Jirai was quiet for a moment, then she spoke gently. In Tlani culture, bonds are not built with emotions first. You build them with actions. With shared struggle, that is how trust begins. I understand that now, Ethan said. She reached into a small pouch at her side and pulled out a thin silver chain with a black stone in the center. It glowed faintly. This is a Tlani bond token, she said. It is not given easily. Only to those who have proven themselves with honor, in spirit and in deed. She placed it in his hand. Ethan looked at it, surprised. You're giving this to me? Yes, she said. Because you changed me. And through you, I see a future where our people walk side by side not in fear, but in friendship. He held the token tightly. I'll keep it safe. Stood up and walked slowly along the pond's edge. Neither said anything for a while. But the silence between them was comfortable, full of unspoken connection. Then Jerai turned to him one last time. You once whispered something. She said, You thought I did not hear it. He chuckled, a little shy. Yes, ... I remember you called me perfect. He looked into her eyes. I still think you are. She paused. Then softly, with her voice low and even, she replied, You are not so imperfect yourself. They both smiled. Far above them, satellites moved through the sky. Far beyond that, the stars waited. A new alliance had been born, not just between governments, but between hearts. And as the stars twinkled above, it was clear this was only the beginning.